Vanessa Cole stood in line like any other first-class traveler. Her boarding pass was ready. Her seat assignment was confirmed. Her name? Already in the airline's VIP database. Nothing about her presence raised concern until it did. One glance, one assumption. That's all it took for everything to change. A gate agent stopped her. No explanation. No eye contact. Security was summoned. And just like that, the tone shifted. What followed wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. But it was public. And every second of it was rooted in the same quiet message. You don't belong here. The airline staff didn't check the system. They didn't ask questions. They didn't see Vanessa as who she was. They saw who they thought she was. And in the world of high-level business, assumptions like that don't just offend. They cost. You'll soon understand why this single moment at Gate 38 didn't just disrupt one woman's travel plans. It collapsed something much larger, something corporate, something worth $10 billion. The question isn't how it happened. The real question is, who paid the price for assuming she was just another passenger? Hey, before we continue, like this video and subscribe to Echoes of Hope Stories HQ for more real-life stories that speak truth to power. And let us know in the comments, what country are you watching from today? We give shout-outs in upcoming episodes, and we'd love to recognize where our powerful stories are reaching. Dr. Vanessa Cole wasn't the kind of executive who needed to prove herself in every room. She let her results speak. At 43, she led one of the most quietly powerful companies in the global climate and logistics space, Sphere Nova Solutions. The firm specialized in next-generation transport systems, artificial intelligence, predictive routing, and sustainable cargo infrastructure. But the real story wasn't the tech, it was who had built it. Vanessa. She was raised in Detroit, in a home where the bookshelves were second-hand and the lessons came at the dinner table. Her mother worked long shifts at the city library. Her father kept schools clean after dark. Their names weren't in headlines, but their values built the foundation for a girl who would one day stand across from Fortune 100 CEOs. Vanessa didn't come from wealth, she came from will. She was the first in her family to attend college, and she didn't just attend. She earned a full ride to Stanford, graduated with honors, went back for her PhD in systems engineering. No shortcuts, no safety net, just consistency, intellect, and drive. Her early career was relentless. She led citywide transit optimization projects, helped revolutionize supply chains for disaster relief, and by her mid-30s had secured $100 million in federal clean tech contracts. But what set her apart wasn't just innovation, it was her approach. Vanessa knew how to build powerful systems, and she did it with integrity. Her company didn't just chase profit, it pursued impact. Her team adored her. Not because she demanded respect, but because she gave it first. And on that morning, boarding a flight to New York, she wasn't traveling for publicity. There were no cameras, no press releases, just a small black carry-on, a first-class seat, and one goal: to finalize a $10 billion partnership with SkyConnect Airlines, a deal that would overhaul their aging infrastructure, reduce emissions, and integrate Sphere Nova's AI logistics into airports across 4 continents. For SkyConnect, it was a lifeline. For Vanessa, it was a turning point. And she was ready. She'd been ready her whole life. But what Vanessa didn't know, what no resume, no doctorate, no company valuation could shield her from, was how quickly one assumption could strip all that away in the eyes of someone who never bothered to ask her name. Power doesn't always look like what people expect, and sometimes that's all it takes. She had done this flight at least 30 times. Same route, same terminal, same airline. It had never been anything more than routine. But this time, something felt different. Vanessa approached Gate 38 without fanfare. She wasn't late, she wasn't distracted, she was simply next in line, ticket in hand, platinum tier status in the system. First class seat, 2A. She took a step forward. The gate agent didn't greet her, didn't look up. She just raised her hand with a flat expression and said, "Ma'am, this line is for first class. No check of the boarding pass, no scan, no verification, just a command wrapped in a statement." Vanessa paused, not offended, just confused. "It is," she replied, calmly offering the pass. Still, the agent didn't look. Her jaw stiffened. "Step aside, please." No explanation, just dismissal. Vanessa, steady as ever, kept her composure. She extended the pass again, a small movement that felt heavier than it should have. She wasn't loud, she wasn't angry, she was just unacceptable. To them. A second gate agent approached. No words were exchanged between them, just a glance, the kind that settles decisions in silence. Then came the shift. From behind her, a man in a blue blazer scoffed. A woman clutched her designer tote a little tighter. Eyes darted from phone screens to Vanessa's face. She could feel it, that familiar atmosphere. Not panic, not confusion, judgment. She tried again. "I'm in 2A, you can scan the barcode." Before she could finish, the second agent raised her voice. "You're holding up the line, ma'am. Please step aside." That word again, ma'am, stripped of respect and filled with distance. She barely had time to respond when two uniformed security officers arrived. One stood on her left, one on her right. Close but not touching. "Is there a problem?" One asked, without looking at her. The gate agent gestured in her direction. "She's refusing to move. We've asked her several times." That was a lie. No raised voice, no refusal, no aggression. But the framing was enough. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us." Vanessa stood still. "My ticket is valid. Please scan it." Still no one checked. Not the agent, not the officer, not the system. Because the system didn't matter. Not in that moment. Only the story being told about her. A black woman, in a tailored suit, standing at the front of the line, that was all they needed. The officer's voice didn't change. His posture did. "Ma'am, if you don't comply, we'll have to remove you from the terminal." And then, without permission, he placed a hand on her elbow. Vanessa didn't resist. She didn't shout. She didn't plead. But she did look around. People were watching now. Passengers behind ropes, phones raised, a teenager recording silently from behind a backpack. A businessman muttering, "Unbelievable." Still, no one stepped forward. She was led away. Past the gate, past the stairs, through a side hallway meant for service staff, and escorted into a cold, fluorescent-lit room with no windows and two metal chairs. She asked for a supervisor. It took 23 minutes for someone to return. When they did, they brought a printed apology voucher and a stale explanation. "We're sorry for the misunderstanding." No ownership, no concern, no awareness. Her flight left without her. The $10 billion meeting she was meant to attend? Still waiting. Her team? Texting frantically. The board at SkyConnect expecting her signature before end of day. But none of that mattered to the people who had judged her unworthy of boarding. Not because of what she did, not because of any threat, but because in their eyes, a black woman in first class needed a reason to be there. And when they didn't see one, they decided to remove her instead. The room wasn't meant for passengers. No windows, no updates. Just two chairs, a plastic table, and a vending machine buzzing quietly in the corner. That's where they put Vanessa. She sat in that so-called holding room for over 20 minutes. No explanation, no supervisor, no apology. Just a paper cup of lukewarm coffee and a folded-up $200 travel voucher, as if that could undo what had already happened. They told her the next available flight was 6 hours later. She asked if her name had been cleared. The agent avoided eye contact and mumbled, "We'll check with corporate." But outside that room, the story had already taken flight. Taylor, her assistant, had been waiting on the other side of the terminal. When Vanessa didn't board, the texts began flying. First from Taylor, "Where are you? Plane is about to taxi." Then from her legal counsel, "Did something happen at the gate?" Then from the VP of SkyConnect Airlines himself, "Our board is gathered. Will you still be arriving for the 2 p.m. signing?" Vanessa didn't reply. She didn't need to. Because while the airline's staff tried to push the incident into silence, the crowd around Gate 38 had seen what happened, and some had recorded it. By the time Vanessa opened her phone again, she was already trending. Vanessa Cole, #boardroom bias, black exec blocked. One clip, 38 seconds long, showed her standing calmly at the gate, ticket outstretched. Another showed her being walked away by two uniformed officers. No resistance, no outburst, just the face of a woman whose dignity had been dismissed. The internet didn't wait. A former employee tweeted, "She's the most composed leader I've ever worked for." They did this to her? A tech journalist wrote, "If Vanessa Cole isn't safe in first class, what does that say for the rest of us?" The airline scrambled. Within 2 hours, a press statement was issued. Generic, sanitized. We regret any inconvenience caused by an unfortunate misunderstanding involving a valued customer. But Vanessa knew inconvenience. She had flown during blizzards, slept in terminals, missed family birthdays for work. This was erasure. They didn't misplace her seat. They erased her presence. A black woman, a CEO, a guest of the very company now pretending they had no idea who she was. And the thing about racism in professional spaces? It rarely shouts. It whispers in protocol. It hides in who gets asked questions and who gets escorted out without one. Vanessa didn't call a press conference. She didn't go live on Instagram. She just sat there, in that quiet room, and let the weight of it settle. Then she made one phone call. Not to a friend, not to her assistant, to the chairman of SkyConnect's board. The man who had toasted to their joint future just 3 weeks earlier. The man who had praised Sphere Nova's technology as the core cornerstone of SkyConnect's modernization. She didn't raise her voice. She simply said, "I won't be attending the signing." And just like that, the countdown began. Not to her next flight, but to the collapse of a $10 billion deal. 18 months. That's how long Vanessa's company, Sphere Nova Solutions, had worked on the SkyConnect integration deal. 18 months of high-level meetings, system testing, scenario modeling, and board approvals. The project? Transformational. A full-scale AI platform designed to modernize the airline's operations across 4 continents. It wasn't just a software upgrade, it was a blueprint for the future of global travel. Vanessa's platform was set to optimize SkyConnect's fuel consumption, automate ground operations, reduce delays, and streamline international scheduling. Their projections showed cost savings of $750 million per year. SkyConnect's board had voted unanimously to move forward. The final documents were prepared. Legal teams had reviewed every clause. Vanessa's signature, scheduled for 2 p.m. that very day, was the final step. Everything was ready. Until it wasn't. Because when Vanessa called SkyConnect's chairman, she wasn't checking in. She wasn't making small talk. She was making a decision. Her voice was calm, clear. She gave him the full account. Gate 38. No scan, no question, security, removed, dismissed, publicly. And then she said something he wouldn't forget. If this is how your staff treats a black woman in first class, imagine how you treat people without power. There was a pause on the other end. He stuttered, offered apologies, asked what could be done to make this right. Vanessa didn't entertain the scramble. She simply replied, "This partnership no longer reflects the values of my company." Then she ended the call. No raised voice, no threats, just certainty. By 6:45 a.m. the next morning, Sphere Nova's legal team sent the formal notice of withdrawal, triggering the termination clause in the contract. It was final. The deal, valued at $10 billion over a decade, was gone. By the time SkyConnect's executive team got into their offices, the story had already moved beyond damage control. An anonymous source from Sphere Nova had confirmed the reason behind the deal collapse. And the press wasted no time. Tech CEO cancels $10 billion partnership after airline incident. One mistake, $10 billion lost. Racial profiling at Gate 38, the $10 billion price tag. Within hours, SkyConnect's stock dropped 8%. Internal Slack channels lit up with panic. Executives were forced into emergency meetings. Shareholders started calling board members. Investors demanded an explanation. Some of them had seen the footage. Others didn't need to. The facts were enough. A CEO, respected globally, had been removed from a flight without cause. By the very airline she was poised to help transform. And now, they had to answer to Wall Street. The collapse of the deal wasn't just a financial blow. It was a reputation crisis. It signaled something even worse than poor judgment. It exposed the culture beneath the brand. Because Vanessa's decision didn't come from ego, it came from experience. She had walked into boardrooms where people assumed she was someone's assistant. She had sat in negotiations where her ideas were echoed back to her by men who hadn't listened the first time. She had built a billion-dollar firm from nothing, only to be treated like a threat in a boarding line. Vanessa knew how this story played out. But this time, she held the pen, and she chose a different ending. The SkyConnect board released a secondary statement, stiff and insufficient. "We regret that a valued business partner experienced a breakdown in service during a recent travel encounter. We are reviewing protocols to ensure this does not happen again." It didn't land. Industry leaders saw through the phrasing. It wasn't a service issue. It was a bias issue. And the cost of ignoring that? $10 billion. Lost. Instantly. In private, SkyConnect's executive team begged for reconsideration. They offered incentives, promised retraining, even suggested a joint press release to help reshape the narrative. Vanessa never responded. She didn't need a microphone to prove her point. She already had everyone's attention. And more importantly, she had shown them the one thing they weren't prepared to lose: leverage. Because for all their infrastructure and status, it only took one moment, one racist, unchecked moment, to lose everything they had spent years trying to build. And that wasn't just her victory. That was their lesson. What if she hadn't been a CEO? What if her name wasn't tied to patents, press releases, and multi-billion-dollar partnerships? What if there had been no cameras, no headlines, no contract left unsigned? Would anyone have believed her? Would anyone have cared? Because the truth is, Vanessa wasn't removed for what she did. She was removed because of what they saw, or rather what they refused to see. Stats show that Black travelers are 3.4 times more likely to be flagged for additional screening in U.S. airports than white passengers, despite no higher rate of violations. We like to pretend air travel is equal: boarding zones, assigned seats, uniform procedures. But the experience is far from neutral. Security screenings, gate checks, random verifications. They're not always random. They're patterned, and those patterns reveal something far deeper than a boarding pass ever could. Because racism in these spaces doesn't always wear a uniform. It wears a smile, a lanyard, a tone. It exists not just in what is said, but in who is believed. It's a question Black travelers learn to navigate early. How much dignity do I trade to keep things calm? You don't argue, you explain, you prove, again and again and again. More stats. In a recent corporate survey showed that 67% of Black professionals reported being mistaken for junior staff or non-executive roles, even when they held leadership titles. The airport is just a mirror. The gate is just another glass ceiling. And the mistake they made with Vanessa? It wasn't uncommon. The only difference was who they made it to. Because she didn't just belong in first class, she built the technology that would have made their airline better. She didn't have to yell, she didn't need to tweet. She simply chose not to sign. That's the power they never saw coming. Racism doesn't need to shout. Sometimes it just assumes. It assumes that Black women are angry when they're assertive. It assumes they're staff when they're leaders. It assumes they're out of place even when they're paying more, contributing more, and bringing more to the table than anyone else in the room. So yes, Vanessa walked away. But she walked away from more than just a plane. She walked away from a boardroom that didn't deserve her presence. And maybe the real loss for SkyConnect wasn't the money. It was the message they sent to the world about who belongs where and who still has to prove it. Vanessa didn't hold a press conference. She didn't call reporters. She didn't post a video thread or hashtag her name into the news cycle. She didn't need to. Her actions had already spoken louder than outrage ever could. The world expected her to explode. Instead, she went to work. 2 weeks after walking away from the SkyConnect deal, Vanessa launched a new nonprofit, ClearPath. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't performative, it was focused. ClearPath was built to challenge the culture that made Gate 38 possible. Its mission? To create real accountability and lasting equity in two worlds. Vanessa knew well: air travel and corporate leadership. She started with a simple framework. Advocate for mandatory anti-bias training for all commercial airline staff. Develop equity audits across airport systems. Build legal resources for travelers facing discrimination in transit. Partner with industry leaders willing to redesign policy from the inside. And she wasn't stopping there. At the Global Equity and Innovation Forum, she took the stage. No script, no sound bites, just presence. And when she spoke, the room leaned in. Her words were few, but they carried weight. Visibility isn't vanity, it's safety. If we have to be exceptional just to be seen, then the system isn't neutral, it's broken. She didn't need to convince anyone, she was living proof of the gap. She poured herself into this new work, not to punish the airline, but to protect those who wouldn't have had the option to walk away. ClearPath partnered with 2 universities, launched data research into racial bias patterns in air transit, funded mentorships for Black women entering STEM careers in aviation and tech. And Vanessa? She took $2 million from Sphere Nova's own reserve and seeded it directly into the nonprofit. No strings, no announcement, just action. She didn't cancel the deal to make a statement. She did it because her dignity wasn't negotiable, and because she knew something many people never get the chance to prove. That grace doesn't mean silence, and power doesn't always announce itself when it enters the room. Sometimes, power is the choice to say no to something everyone else would have accepted just to keep the peace. Vanessa didn't need applause. She built something that would outlast the headlines. Not revenge, redirection. Because where one company had failed to see her, she made sure thousands of others would be seen. The video clip only lasted 38 seconds. But its impact kept echoing. What started as a quiet injustice at Gate 38 became something else entirely. A mirror, held up to every industry, every boardroom, every blind spot that had gone unchallenged for far too long. People went ahead, tweet on X and post on other social media platforms. There were posts like, "Fly Captain Darius, to the woman they tried to remove, you showed them who actually flies the plane." Future coder Jaden, her story made me apply to MIT. I didn't know someone like me could run a company like that. VPintech Corp, our company did a full DEI audit because of your silence. That's what leadership looks like. There were no viral hashtags from Vanessa, no televised speeches, but the silence she chose spoke volumes. It told companies that values aren't branding, they're behavior. And when your culture fails someone like Vanessa Cole, people start asking, who else have you failed? Headlines read, "A lesson in power, how one CEO redefined accountability. Not a scandal, a study, corporate culture's blind spot exposed. Bias at the gate, the true cost of underestimating women of color." This wasn't tabloid fodder. This wasn't internet drama. It became a case study, assigned in MBA courses, referenced in global policy summits, and dissected in crisis management seminars. All because one woman refused to trade respect for convenience. They thought the PR storm would pass, but the story didn't fade, it multiplied. In internal circles, companies whispered, "We can't afford a Vanessa Cole moment." But in communities across the country, especially among Black professionals, the story meant something deeper. It meant being seen. It meant that dignity could be defended. That silence could be strategic. That success didn't mean safety, but it could still mean strength. She didn't set out to become a symbol, but for many, she became one anyway. Not of outrage, not of vengeance, but of control in a world designed to take it from you. The $10 billion no wasn't the cost, it was the consequence. Vanessa Cole didn't need revenge. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't campaign for sympathy. She didn't perform for a headline. She needed one thing, respect. And when she didn't get it, she walked, not with anger, with clarity, because some doors aren't worth entering, even when you're holding the keys. She didn't break the system. She revealed it. She showed us how racism doesn't always come in shouts or slurs. Sometimes it shows up in silence, in suspicion, in the way someone looks at you and decides you don't belong before they know your name. And she reminded us that power isn't always loud. Sometimes power just leaves the room and takes $10 billion with it. I didn't raise my voice, I raised the standard. Dr. Vanessa Cole. If you believe respect should never be conditional, if you believe power deserves protection, not profiling, then this is your space. Like this video and share it for more people to see. Also subscribe to Echoes of Hope Stories HQ, where we tell real stories about race, resistance, and the people who refuse to be erased. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? And what part of Vanessa Cole's story hit you the hardest? We want to hear from you, wherever you're watching from. And stay tuned for our next story, because the world is watching, and so are we. You won't want to miss it. Until next time, stay loud, stay kind, and never forget, silence is a choice. Let's keep echoing hope together.